Something horrible happened in the United Kingdom last week, and that is the fact that democracy took place. Democracy is very interesting. I'm starting to look into this concept. Apparently, when the establishment manages to win, then democracy requires protection. People who talk against democracy need to be suppressed. But when populists manage to win an election, then it's horrible. It's disastrous. Again, democracy is in danger, regardless of the fact that the populist got the popular vote, regardless of the fact that his ideas are constitutional, they're not breaking any laws. But the simple fact that the populist won and the correct people aren't getting promoted, you have like an individual that can't be controlled, all of a sudden an outsider comes to power, it's devastating, it's horrible. And the press will write articles, in this case it is one of the most disgruntled articles that I have ever read, to tell you why you need to hate the man, why the man is bad. Now, while I read this article, I didn't get any of the man's politics, so I had to actually look it up and see who this George Galloway is. But you'll see how hilarious the article is when we actually get to it. So first, who is George Galloway? Now, apparently, he managed to win a seat as a representative of quite a significant area in the United Kingdom, which is called Rochdale. And the reason he won is because the Muslims gave him the vote, right? So how did that happen? Like, how did he manage to appeal to that demographic? And the answer is due to the fact that people in the UK have lost faith in their government. And honestly, I don't blame them. As an outsider looking into UK politics, I do find it quite bizarre that regardless of the person elected, the same policies are being enacted. So what I mean by this is that when it came to Brexit, you have Theresa May. And Theresa May in the beginning, she's like a hard Brexiteer. She's like, oh, we're going to have no deal if they're going to give us a bad deal. Like, she's getting all these interesting speeches and everyone likes her. And then when she gets into power, she behaves exactly like everyone else. And it's like, well, actually, let's see, we need to make a deal with the EU. We can't just have no deal. Like, all of a sudden, complete 180. It's almost like she's a different person. But then you have Boris Johnson, and Boris Johnson is like the same, he's like, oh my god, this is the British Trump. And he's got like all these hardline policies, and he seems like a no-nonsense man, and he's got a history into politics, right? And everyone likes him, and then he gets elected, and he's no different than Theresa May. And you notice, like, not just with Brexit, but like, when it came with Boris Johnson to talk about the pandemic, he comes out on television, this is at the beginning, he says, like, we're not going to do any of that Chinese shit, like, we're not going to lock people down, we're going to have a two-tier system, it's going to be like the people that need to be protected, the most vulnerable, the elderly, the people that are sick with cancer and autoimmune diseases, we're going to protect them, but the rest of us, we still have to work, like, we still need to get our economy on track, like, none of this nonsense. It took a couple of weeks. He does a 180. No, we're locking everything down. Tier 11 lockdown. We're going to send the cops after you if you're sunbathing. There were people that came out and said, like, I know Boris. Like, I have been with him in university. And he would never lock down pubs. Because you had, like, historical British pubs completely crashed by the policies surrounding COVID, right? So, like, what happened? Like, how did this person all of a sudden did a 180? Like what changed? And you notice that there is weirdness coming from it, because if they were so concerned that they thought that the pandemic is so deadly, why were they partying? Right? Like, you had the conservatives being caught in a scandal that during the lockdowns, they were partying. And it's like, well, weren't they concerned for their safety, right? Like, are they more concerned for my safety than they are for theirs? That's what most British people ask. So you notice, like, this bizarre thing, but like, what really sealed the deal, what really made me realize that, hold on, in Britain, it's very difficult to talk about a democracy anymore. Like the will of the people, fuck off. Like, there is no such thing. You got Liz Truss, the prime minister, and all of a sudden, everyone is like leaving her cabinet and she is pushed out of her position, and then someone is being named in her place, like someone is being installed in her place. That's not democracy. I mean, I'm sure, like within the confines of the law, you can make the argument that, well, I mean, it happened, but it was so bizarre because the people themselves didn't oust Liz Truss. They didn't have like an election or something, right? And then you have Liz Truss going into interviews and saying that as the prime minister, she didn't have all the powers that she thought she would. She wouldn't be able, for instance, to fire the person in charge of the Bank of England. And it's like, hold on a little bit. So you're telling me that the people who elect the person in the highest position of office, which is the prime minister, doesn't have the right to fire whomever they want? No. And when you look at the British system, you have like the civil servants, you have like the managerial class, and all of a sudden it makes sense, like you can vote for whomever you want, but at the end of the day, the managerial class and the civil servants and, apparently the Bank of England are going to have a significant say over the people. So with this mindset, it makes sense that people are less likely to go to vote because they think, well, it doesn't matter. So in the last elections, the presence at the voting booth significantly dropped, dramatically so. Now, you also have the conflict between Israel and Palestine, right? So the Middle Eastern conflict. And of course, the United Kingdom, both the Labour and the Conservatives, which again, it's almost like the same thing because it's the managerial class that get to decide. Both of them decided to import as many people from the Middle East as possible. So when you do that, you also import the culture and you import the problems, right? So like if you're going to import people from the Middle East, who do you think they're going to side with, Israel or Palestine? Now, the UK government policy is that they're going to side with Israel. But the people that come from Middle East, they bring the mindset with them. Like they don't drop it at the border, right? So this is why you have like all of these Free Palestine movements within the UK. You look at them, they're mostly represented by people from the Middle East. Again, they're bringing the culture and the issues from that area into Britain. Makes sense, right? Now, those people can vote. So what happens when you have like a person that takes advantage of the situation and like wants to represent those people, whether it's a grift or he genuinely believes it, but he goes and signs up and he's now on the ballot. Well, if people don't go to vote and you only have like a small percentage of people showing up, that small percentage is going to decide who's going to be the representative for the others that didn't go to vote. If you have absolutely no one going to the voting polls and just one person decides to go, that one person can decide who's going to be the representatives for hundreds of thousands of people. It's the way it works. It's the way the system is designed to work, right? So because they didn't have like the average Labour supporters, the average Conservative supporters, the average people going to the ballot, well, the people that did go to the ballot ended up voting for George Galloway, much to the dismay, horror, and shock of the press and the establishment. So why are they so afraid of Mr. Galloway? Well, apparently, he's a communist, from what I could tell. He did support Brexit, but he also considered that the fall of the Soviet Union to be one of the most tragic events in his lifetime. That tells me a lot, right? That tells me all I need to hear. He is also against conflicts, like he's an old style of communist where pacifism is the key, so he doesn't want Britain to support any foreign war. And that's why he got elected, right? So because of the Free Palestine platform is why the establishment is so shocked. I find it very interesting that, in London, for instance, you have a knife crime epidemic. And they tackle with that as much as they can. Like there was a British politician that suggested that maybe we should put GPS in knives so we can track them, blunting the edge of the knife, like many solutions, right? But now with the Free Palestine movement, it's like, well, maybe we should deport people who are protesting like that and they're being violent and attacking the cops. Like maybe we should deport. So I'm glad that I finally noticed that there is a line. Like there is something that you can do in the United Kingdom that is over the pale, like up until that point, knife crime, gangs, drugs, but free no, that is a line. Okay, so there is a line. I mean, Rishi Sunak came on, very concerned about George Galloway winning. Democracy is in danger, and I'm like, well, Mr. Sunak, didn't you get installed? Like this guy whether you like him or not, whether you can justify it or not, he did get elected. Like people did vote for him, right? Who voted for you? Anyway, listen to this article. Like, this is the most unhinged stuff that I have ever seen. England, even amongst the post-industrial towns of northern England, Rochdale, the setting for the ugliest by-election in memory. They say this as it's an objective truth, right? Like, it's the ugliest in memory. It's like, yeah, but this is your opinion as a journalist. Like, stop talking as if it's a fact that happened. It's your opinion that is the ugliest. Like, the people who voted for him probably think differently. I agree with her, by the way. I agree with her, but like for different reasons. I think that the problem is that the parties have lost the faith of the electorate. Like, the electorate do not believe in the parties anymore. Even in communism, you still got to vote. But if the politician in charge didn't get at least 50% of the votes of the people that he was representing, he would be forced to step down. So no, seriously, like, this was in socialist Romania and throughout the entire Soviet Union. You still went to vote, and there was just one guy on the ballot. And the question is like, well, why would you go to vote then? Like, what was the purpose, right? And the purpose was that if he didn't get 50% of the votes, there would be a new election, and they would the Communist Party would nominate someone else. In Britain, the question is, like, how many of the representatives even get 50% of the votes? And I'm not talking about Galloway. I'm talking about conservatives or labours, representing a particular area. Like how many of them even manage to get 50 plus 1% of them? That's a credibility crisis, by the way. That's people losing faith in the system. That's a legitimacy crisis as well. But anyway, right, it's a complicated issue. Listen to this, right? So the town hall is a Gothic palace that looks as if it could, if asked, drip blood. It's menstruating. Look, people say Adolf Hitler loved this building and wanted it moved to Germany. It's a myth, but they believe it because Rochdale is cursed. It was ground zero for the abuse of children. So I just want you to understand what the press is doing, right? Like, just how unhinged this article really is, right? This man wins an election, and instead of them actually having a conversation about the subject, like I do with you guys, because I consider you to be normal, grown adults, and we can talk about complex issues. Like, I don't like George Galloway. I don't think he's going to be a good politician. I think he's a grifter. But we can still discuss like, why did he win? How did it happen? What is going to, like, what are his policies? Like this is a normal conversation that the Romanian press would have. Because we believe that the people watching are mature adults capable of forming their own opinions. But the way that the political journalist talking about it is like, okay, like, think about it. Blood dripping from the building. The Nazis, Adolf Hitler. Child molestation. And it's funny because, like, they're basically saying that the city is shit, right? Like, they're basically saying Rochdale. It may be, I don't know. I haven't been there. But what I do know is that if the next election you have a Labour person winning, right? Or someone that the press likes, are you still going to say, well, because the same building that allegedly it's almost dripping blood, the same building is going to be there. The same people that believe Adolf Hitler wanted that building are going to be there. The same history with the child molestation is going to be there, right? Like, so the same people that you're like disparaging now because they voted in a way you didn't like, they're still going to be there. And if they vote Labour, what are you going to say? Is it going to be like, oh, well, now we can't trust this guy because he got voted by evil people? I mean, look where they live. Buildings dripping blood. Hitler wanted the building. The infantilization, isn't it? Like, that's the problem. The treatment of people who are watching this as if they're children. I don't like to treat you like children. I like to treat you like customers because I need to e-beg now. So, in the pinned comment, if you scroll down, there are links where you can donate to the channel. Every little bit helps. Like $1 over there is worth a lot more here in Eastern Europe. Look, I need to do the shameful tactics. It's called e-begging. We don't call it e-begging anymore now because everyone does it, right? So all of a sudden it's a prestigious activity. But it's how I found myself. So if you like the channel, please support it. And I'll see you guys in the comment section. Take care.